Welcome back, everyone. No matter where you are, no matter what time it may be, I hope y'all are doing well out there. I'm going to tell you straight up immediately. Tonight's upload is another heavy one. Every now and then someone sends me an email that isn't about a single encounter. It's about an entire life being shaped by that moment that never should have happened. Tonight, you all are going to hear from a former EMT who's been tortured, struggling with something on his shoulders for almost 20 years. Something he says he's never told a soul until now. This one isn't about seeing a Dogman once and running for your life. It's about how the aftermath can follow a man through marriages, jobs, friendships, sanity, and how the thing he saw never stopped showing up. Not to hurt him, not to help him, but because of something he witnessed on a night that still destroys him to talk about. I'm not going to try to dress this one up. I'm not going to hype it like it's entertainment. Keep in mind while you hear this is somebody's real life. Somebody's breaking point. Somebody finally decided they're tired of carrying something alone. I want to thank y'all for listening. Thank you so much for being here. If anyone out there is hearing this and you've had an encounter of your own and would like to share it here on the channel, either privately with me or sharing it on the channel, be sure and reach out to me. Send me an email. I'd love to hear your story. My email address will be linked in the description below the video. Legends, lock in, and let's begin. Everyone grab a drink. Lock your doors and windows. Hit the lights. And let's get started. First email. Subject line. The call I received that ruined my life. Real adventures. You can call me Mark. I'm 53 years old, divorced, no kids, living out here in central Kentucky, in a place that wasn't even cleaned right before I moved in. It's a rental. None of that matters, really. I'm only mentioning it so you understand the kind of man you're hearing this from. I'm not special in any way. I'm not particularly wise. I'm not the emotional type either. I've spent half my life riding in an ambulance, scraping people off the side of the road and pulling kids out of situations no one should ever see. I'm not trying to brag about the job. I'm not ashamed of it either. But it did change me in a lot of ways. What happened near the end of it, that's what finished the job. That's what finally completely broke my mind. I worked EMS for 22 years, mostly night shifts. It fit me better. The calls slow down a little after 3 in the morning, and the world just goes quiet. You learn how to breathe between the chaos. My partner back then was a guy named Corey. He was younger than me by 10 years, but he was sharp. Good instincts. This kid wanted to move to flight medic work someday. I don't know if he still plans that. We haven't spoken in a very long time. This story isn't about my career anyway. It's about the call that made me walk away from it for good. About what I saw in the woods that night. The thing that didn't leave me alone even after I saw it. This happened in 2012, early spring. It was rain earlier in the week and it left the ground soft. I remember that because how deep the search team's boots were sinking later on. We got toned out for a missing child around 7:30 in the evening. 7-year-old boy. Wandered off from his yard while playing outside. The mother called 911 after he didn't come back and she couldn't find him within the hour. The sheriff's deputies were already on scene when we got there. They didn't need us for medical at that point. They needed us for manpower. Out here, EMS gets pulled into searches more often than people realize. The boy's house sat on the edge of a thick patch of woods, more like a tangle of steep ridges, fallen trees, and run-off channels that will turn your ankles sideways if you're not careful. This isn't the kind of place a child wanders into by accident, unless he really liked adventure or was chasing after something. We split into teams. Corey and I were paired with one deputy and one volunteer firefighter. We hiked maybe a quarter mile, sweeping left to right with flashlights, screaming the boy's name constantly, stopping for any sound. Nothing. No movement around us. Not even animals. The woods were too quiet for that time of night. I noticed it, but I didn't really think anything of it yet. I mean, we were out there screaming, searching for the kid. I'm sure that spooked most of the animals. But I'll come to find out that wasn't the main reason for all the quiet. There was something else out there with us. Anyway, about 40 minutes into the search, we got to this narrow ridge that was overlooking a bowl-shaped clearing. There was a runoff ditch down the middle. It was still muddy from the rain. The deputy said he wanted to check the ditch in case the kid slipped and got stuck. Corey agreed. I stayed up on the ridge, scanning the opposite side with my light. That's when I saw the first sign. Down below where the ridge curved upward again, something was standing near a cluster of trees. I didn't see details at first. Just a solid height, a solid shape, and a very strange posture. Enough to know it wasn't a person, especially one from our team. In my mind, I believed it was possibly another search crew member. But the way it stood, stiff, forward angled, its head was low. I've never seen a human stand like that before. My first instinct should have been large animal, but my brain refused that as well. Nothing about the outline matched anything that I could place. I got Corey's attention and nodded toward the opposite ridge. He shined his light over, but hit nothing. Whatever I'd seen had moved or stepped behind something. For a second, I thought maybe my eyes were just tired. Long shift the night before. Not enough sleep. You know how it goes. We started down into the ditch. It was slick. The mud was soft. It was slippery on our boots. The deputy radioed updates. Volunteers were combing the north woods. Dogs had not hit on anything yet. Then everything shifted in about 10 seconds. Corey was maybe 20 feet ahead of me. He suddenly stopped. His light was fixed on something in the mud. He just said my name, in a low voice. "Mark, you need to see this." I walked up beside him, leaned over, and I froze right there. It was a small footprint, bare footprint, not deep enough to be a grown man's, the right size for a small child. And right beside it was something else, a print bigger than my whole foot, and boot included. It was long, skinny. It ended in distinct points. It wasn't round like a dog. It was shaped not even like a boot. It was nothing I'd ever seen before, and the spacing between the prints suggested whatever made it was heavy, much heavier than the other print, which was obviously the kid. I didn't say a word. Corey didn't either. We just looked at each other. The deputy came over. He saw it, cussed under his breath, and radioed something I didn't even catch. Then, from up on the ridge behind us, I heard a sound I will never forget. It was this burst of air. It sounded like a heavy exhale, but it seemed to be too much air to be real. It was very slow. It was controlled, like something huge was watching, and it was trying to get our attention, making any sound it could. This was a very odd noise. It was like someone letting all the air out of a compressor at once. It was very powerful. I immediately turned my light toward the ridge, and there it was, standing there, its upper body leaning forward, arms hanging long at its sides. This wasn't a man, not even close. The head was forward set. Its shoulders were high, the torso was skinny. It wasn't crouched down, it wasn't hunched over, it was just standing there, watching us like we were the ones who wandered somewhere we didn't belong. This thing definitely had the head of a wolf, but the size of it is unbelievable. The head looked way too big for the body. My stomach started flipping. I couldn't even speak. I remember Corey saying, "What is that?" As soon as he said something, that thing's head tilted very slowly to one side. It stepped back into the dark, and the whole ridge just went silent again, and we were alone. Or so we felt alone. We thought it had left, but who really knows? It could have still been there watching us. The deputy ordered us out of the ditch immediately. He didn't yell, he didn't panic, he just spoke with a tone that told us we needed to move now without discussing why. The search was called off within the hour. The sheriff blamed the terrain, said they'd resume at daylight. The boy was never found. Not that night. Not ever. I quit my job 3 months later. It was too heavy. I couldn't carry it. But the worst part, quitting did not make it go away. That wasn't the last time I saw it, not by a long shot. Every time it came back, it brought the memory of that little footprint and the thing standing behind it. I'll write more in the next email, but you need to understand something before I continue. That night didn't haunt me because of what I saw. It haunts me because I know damn well what it did, and that it saw me too. Thanks. Talk to you soon. Mark. Email number 2. The subject line is The Year After. The Spiral. Real adventures. Picking up where I left off. I didn't sleep the night of the search. I don't think anyone on that team did. I just sat at the kitchen table with the lights off, just the stove light behind me. I stared at the wall until the sunrise. My boots were still covered in mud, my uniform pants were still wet. I didn't have the energy to even change them. I kept seeing that footprint. Not the boy's only, the other one. I remember thinking if I could just wrap my head around the shape of it, if I could match it to some kind of animal, maybe the whole night would fall back into place. Maybe I could convince myself we'd misseen something, misjudged the height, misinterpreted the posture. But every time I pictured it, the same thing hit me. That thing was standing upright, dead still, watching us. People don't like hearing this, but I'll say it anyway. I've seen dead bodies plenty of times. I've seen burned bodies. Car wrecks so bad you couldn't tell which limb belonged to which person. None of that ever messed with me the way a single silhouette in the woods did. I couldn't explain it, and that's when the spiral started. Now, mind you, it wasn't all at once. It was small pieces, one at a time. This is the kind of decline you don't notice until it's too late. I went back to work 2 days later. I probably should have taken time off, but I couldn't stand the idea of being alone with my thoughts. Riding the ambulance meant noise, radios, engines, traffic, patients screaming or crying. Noise helped. Silence was torture. The first week back, I didn't talk much. The second week, I barely said anything at all. Corey kept asking me if I was all right. He didn't look all right himself. Both of us were jumpy on nighttime calls. Anytime we pulled near a wooded area, we stayed closer to the ambulance than usual. We didn't say why. We didn't have to. Then the dreams all started. I can't exactly remember all of them, but I remember waking up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding like I'd been chased. The image was always the same. I was standing on that ridge, red and blue lights flickering through the trees, and something tall standing just beyond what my flashlight could illuminate. It never comes closer. It never attempts to attack. It just watches like a statue. My ex-wife says that when the marriage really began to fall apart, maybe she's right. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating right. I barely talked. I'd sit on the couch after work with the TV on mute and just stare at the blank spot on the wall where the light never hit right. Trauma doesn't hit everyone the same way. I'd seen horrible things and walked away just fine. But this crawled into a part of my mind that I didn't even know existed. The second sighting happened about 6 weeks after the search. I'm not asking you to believe that it happened. I'm not even sure I can believe it myself. And I lived through it. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Slow night. Me and Corey were parked behind the station. The engine was off. We were finishing paperwork. The bay door was open because it was humid and the air inside the garage gets stale. Out behind the station there's a gravel service road and a small drainage ditch with brush around it. It's nothing particularly thick, but there's just weeds and some saplings, a couple stunted pines. I heard something that sounded like someone walking around behind the building. It was the crunch of gravel, and then the pause, like someone was pacing back and forth. I figured it had to be a stray dog or maybe a deer coming too close out of curiosity. This happens all the time. So I stood up, stretched my back, and walked toward the open bay door to look. At first I didn't see anything. The station's floodlight didn't reach that far. But when I narrowed my eyes and let them adjust to the dark, a shape separated itself from the darkness just beyond the gravel road. It was that same damn outline, that same posture, that same forward-leaning stance. My throat just closed up. I remember grabbing the edge of the door frame to steady myself. I felt dizzy. It wasn't facing me, it was angled away, its head turned slightly as if it was listening to something deeper off in the woods. Like it was distracted. Like it didn't care I was standing 20 yards away. I thought about saying something to Corey, but the words just jammed in my chest. I couldn't speak. I couldn't risk spooking it either. I couldn't risk it turning and realizing how close I was. Then, it lifted its head a little higher. Just listening. Something in my brain clicked. That thing knew exactly where I was before I stepped to that door. It wasn't surprised, it wasn't curious. It was just acknowledging the sound of my movement. I started backing up, real slow. I remember feeling my hands and looking down, they started tingling, and when I checked, they were shaking, and it was out of my control. I could hear my fingernails tapping the metal of the door frame. They were shaking so bad. Corey called out from behind me, asking if I'd dropped one of the charts. That single shout, just my name, was enough. That shape stopped. I mean, every muscle locked in place. Then, just smoother than anything that big should be, It stepped backward one big stride and disappeared behind the trees. I didn't speak for, I don't know, maybe a minute straight. When I finally turned around, Corey knew something was off. He asked what I'd seen. I told him nothing. I couldn't bring myself to say it. If I said it out loud, that would make it real. That was the night my fear changed shape. Before that, I was scared of what I saw. After that, I was scared of what it wanted. Why show itself again? Why near me? Why at the station of all places? And here's the part I've never admitted to anyone. When I first locked eyes with it, by the ditch during the search, I felt something strange. Not evil, but not good either. Just a kind of recognition, like it knew I was there before I ever shined my light. The second sighting, that felt intentional, like it was checking on me, testing me, studying something about how I reacted. After that night, my mental health tanked. I stopped sleeping almost entirely. Micro sleeps at work became normal. Nightmares started coming even during short naps. I began hearing sounds that weren't there. Footsteps outside my apartment window at night, knocking behind the wall when I tried to sleep. Whispers of movement in the parking lot at work. None of those things were real. I know that. But the fear was. I started drinking pretty heavily. Corey's jokes stopped landing. Calls felt heavier and heavier, like every patient was a reminder of what I couldn't save. My marriage cracked open like wet wood splitting. We argued about nothing. We argued about everything. She wanted me to talk. I didn't know how. One night she found me sitting on the floor of the hallway with my back against the wall, lights off, shaking uncontrollably. She asked what I was scared of. I couldn't answer because I didn't know if I was scared of the thing or scared of that I might be losing my mind. The final straw came in late fall. We got toned out for a cardiac arrest on, I won't use the road name here. It was a routine call. An elderly woman. Family, frantic, lights on everywhere. The whole house was buzzing and it was in chaos. I should have been able to handle it. I'd done it 1,000 times. It was my job. That's what I was trained for. But halfway through compressions, I looked at the back door, the one with the little window, and for a split second I saw eyes. Not human ones. Forward-facing, amber-colored, and watching me through the glass. I lost my rhythm and froze. Corey shoved me out of the way and took over. That woman passed away. I don't know if those few seconds made the difference, but in this line of work, hesitation is guilt, whether it's fair or not. 2 days after that, I decided to turn in my resignation. Corey did not protest at all. My wife didn't either. They both thought it was good for me, or it was what was best. I think they both knew I wasn't coming back from whatever that night in the woods did to me. But what none of us understood back then was this. Quitting EMS didn't stop it. It didn't stay in the woods. It didn't belong to the search call. It didn't fade over time. Every few months, sometimes every few weeks, that same shape would find me again. It was never threatening. It never got really that close. It was just near enough to remind me that what I saw wasn't a one-time nightmare. It was the beginning of something else. I'll tell you about the years that followed in the next part. The sightings, the places they happened, the way it always showed up right when life kicked me the hardest. But before I get into all that, I didn't lose my mind because I saw a monster in the woods. I lost my mind because the monster remembered me and was now following me. Thanks, Mark. Email number 3. Subject line: the years that followed. I'm back, Reels. I didn't think life could get quieter after I quit my job, but it did. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was a different kind of quiet. A quiet you could feel in your chest when the world around you keeps moving and you don't. I took a job driving parts for an auto shop. Nothing stressful. No emergencies, no sirens, just deliveries, warehouses, greasy signatures on clipboards. Most days were pretty manageable. Other days felt like I was trying to outrun something that I couldn't even see. My marriage did not survive that shift. There's no dramatic story behind it. She didn't cheat. I didn't either. We just stopped being two people sharing a life and turned into two people surviving under the same roof. When she left, all she said was, "You're here, but you're not here. I hope someday you come back to yourself." I didn't have anything to say to that. I didn't even have the strength to, anyway. I moved into a small apartment behind a gas station. Cheap tile, leaky pipes, neighbors who argued at strange hours. It didn't bother me. I wasn't trying to build a future. I was just trying to stay alive long enough to feel normal again. But unfortunately, normal wasn't in the cards. Not with what was chasing me. The first time I saw it after quitting EMS, I'd been out of the job for maybe 3 months. It was late at night, I'm guessing around 11. I'd walked out back to throw away pizza boxes because the apartment dumpster was closer than the front. There's a narrow alley behind the building. It was a poorly lit strip where the light posts made more noise than they actually did shine. I lifted the dumpster lid, tossed the boxes in, and I heard something above me. Just a small movement in gravel on the roof. Could have been a cat. It could have been anything. But it stepped forward. It wasn't a cat. I didn't hear it walk as much as I could feel it. There was a massive change in the air pressure around me, a heaviness behind me. When I turned around, there was a silhouette at the far end of the alley. Same build, that familiar forward posture, same narrow torso tapering down, that same giant head. At first I thought it was closer than it actually was. The dark plays tricks on you, you know. But then a car passed on the street behind it. The headlights gave me just enough of an outline to know it was standing still. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I didn't do anything. I swear to you, it took one step backward and just melted into the dark behind the building. It never ran. It just eased itself out of the light like it was never even there. A few weeks later, I stopped at a gas station next door around 3 a.m. I couldn't sleep. I needed some coffee. There's a window on the side of the building facing a wooded drainage ditch. I was paying the cashier when he froze mid-sentence. He said, "Yo, what is that?" I followed his eyes. Something big moved in the ditch. It was tall enough I could see the head clear above the brush. The cashier leaned forward, and then he said something that still makes me feel sick. "Is that someone in like a dog costume?" I wish that's what it was, a costume. The figure stood there long enough for both of us to process it. Then it crouched down, smooth and quiet, and took off into the ditch and was gone. The cashier ran outside thinking someone was messing with the store. He came back inside 30 seconds later. He was as pale as drywall. He said there's nothing out there. Whatever that was is gone. I didn't say a word. In that moment, I realized something important. It wasn't only showing up when I was alone. This time someone else saw it as well. That should have made me feel less crazy, but it didn't. It made everything worse. This part is a hard part for me to type. It was late, close to 5 a.m. I'd been up all night replaying the search call in my head again. It happens sometimes. It never goes away completely. I went to get a glass of water. The window in my kitchen overlooks a patch of grass and then the woods that run behind the gas station. I turned on the sink, filled the glass, and looked out the window. Something was standing just inside the trees. It was maybe 40 yards away, but that's plenty close enough. Its shoulders were visible first, then that head. It was turned sideways, not facing me. Then it turned its head, not its body, just the head, straight toward the window. I felt my whole body go numb and start tingling from the shoulders down. This wasn't fear. Shock. This was the kind of shock that locks up your lungs. It didn't do anything. It wasn't creeping around the house or trying to get in the windows. It just stood there staring at me, a long, heavy stare like it was checking in, saying, "I'm here." Almost like it was waiting for me to acknowledge its presence. I just shut the curtain, went to the bedroom, sat on the floor with my back to the wall until the sun came up. I didn't sleep for 3 days after that happened. Over the next few years, the sightings just kept happening. Not weekly, and they weren't predictable. They were just enough to ruin any chance of forgetting or having a normal life. Whenever things started to settle, whenever I thought maybe I was stabilizing, that thing showed up again. Always at a distance, always standing still, always aware of me before I noticed it. And the strange thing is, the only pattern I ever picked up. This thing always appeared when my life was at its worst. After my divorce finalized. After a coworker died by, harming himself. After my mother passed. After I lost my delivery job. After I drank too much and wrecked my truck. After nights where loneliness hit me like a brick. It wasn't random. This wasn't a coincidence. It was like it could smell the cracks in my life, like it was drawn to my depression. I don't buy into supernatural stuff, I never have. But I know one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever I saw that night, that boy disappeared. That was not just an animal. It wasn't just something passing through the area. It was connected to that moment. And somehow it got connected to me. This thing never tried to hurt me. It never chased after me. It never broke into the house. It never did anything violent, actually. But the way that it would just watch me every time told me exactly why I never saw it up close. It didn't need to attack to ruin me. It just needed to be there, and it knew it. It was getting in my head. It wanted to hurt me in the worst way possible. To make me suffer. It enjoyed it. And the more broken I became, the more often it would show up. Like it was tied to my failures, my grief, my guilt, my past, my conscience. I don't know what that even means yet. But the years weren't done with me, not by a long shot. Everything I thought I knew about that night, everything I assumed was true, got ripped apart when someone reached out to me unexpectedly. Someone who was there. Someone who saw something too. Someone who had stayed quiet even longer than I had. And what he told me changed everything. I'll send that part next. I'm pretty tired. It's late. But I will say prepare yourself, because the next email isn't about me seeing the Dogman. It's about truth. And truth is the one thing I was not ready for. Talk to you soon. Mark. Email number 4. Subject line: The Confession. I need you to understand, Reels, something before I tell this next part. I spent years thinking I was carrying this alone. Years thinking what I saw that night was either a one-off hallucination or a punishment for the boy we couldn't find. And when you live with that kind of weight long enough, it becomes part of you. You stop expecting answers, you stop expecting help. You sure as hell stop expecting the past to reach back out. But that's exactly what happened. It had been almost 7 years since the missing child call. 7 years of nightmares, sightings, drinking myself to death, losing the only steady job I had left, and watching my life shrink down to an apartment with peeling paint and a view of a gas station dumpster. I was sitting on my couch one night, same routine as always. The lights were low, the TV was on but muted. I was just trying to get my mind to settle when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Normally I'll ignore calls like that. This time, I don't know why I answered. Maybe boredom, maybe instinct, maybe something else. When I picked up, a familiar voice said my name. It took me a second, too long, honestly, to recognize. I hadn't heard that voice in years. It was Corey, my old partner. I was confused and didn't really say anything at first. He didn't either. Felt like we were both afraid to talk. Like we were both waiting for the other one to say something first. Or waiting for the wrong thing to be said. Finally, he said I shouldn't be calling you, but I need to talk to someone who was there. I instantly felt my stomach drop. There are only a handful of things there could have meant, and only one of them made my hands go numb again. He asked if he could come by. I told him yeah before I even thought about it. He showed up 15 minutes later, the same car he had when we worked EMS together. Beat to hell Ford sedan with a cracked bumper and dents from hitting too many curbs during night runs. Seeing it parked outside my window hit me like a punch in the chest. Now Corey himself looked way older than he should have. He had lines around his eyes. His hair looked like it was going thin. He was slumped like he was carrying invisible weight on his back. He didn't even shake hands, he didn't hug, we just nodded at each other like men who'd been through something awful and never talked about it. I sat down across from him. He didn't take off his jacket. He didn't sit all the way back in the chair. He sat on the edge of it, elbows on his knees, rubbing his hands together. The first thing he said was, "Do you still see it?" Just like that. No dancing around it, no easing in. No pretending the thing in the woods wasn't real. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The look on my face probably said it all. He nodded slow, and his eyes moved toward my window even though the blinds were closed. I knew it. I knew it wasn't just me, he said. He told me he'd been seeing it too. Not often, not in the same places as me, but Always the same shape, the same height, the same thing. He saw it once near his garage, twice in his backyard. Once, and God help him, outside his daughter's bedroom window. He said he tried to convince himself it was all the stress, lack of sleep, PTSD, some sort of flashbacks. But night after night he kept waking up at exactly 2:17 a.m. Every damn time. Same minute, same cold feeling. He'd get up, said he would look out the window, and sometimes he wouldn't see anything, but sometimes he'd see it out there, standing at a distance, just watching him, statue still, same as me. It never approached, it was never threatening, never leaving until he looked away. He told me he'd packed up and moved to 2 different houses trying to outrun it. Didn't seem to matter. It would always find him every time. He leaned forward and said my name and asked me if I remembered the second footprint. Of course I did, but I did not want to talk about it. But I knew he had something on his mind that he needed to get out, so I swallowed hard and said, yeah, I remember it. Why? The boy's footprint, and the one beside of it. He wasn't talking about the one in the ditch. No, he meant another one. There was one more, he told me, up near the ridge. The sheriff wouldn't let us get close to it. I felt my skin go cold. What in God's name was he talking about? He said when the search was being broken down, when they were calling everyone back to base, one of the deputies radioed that he had found an impression farther up on the ridge. Not a footprint, according to the sheriff, not an animal track, not anything normal. Corey said he tried to get a look at it, walked toward the spot with another volunteer before the sheriff started screaming to stay back. The sheriff looked scared, is what he told me. He said he didn't look like he was confused at all, he was just scared. Then he told me something that I could not believe. 2 deputies took pictures. 1 deputy threw up. And then everyone was told to shut up and go home. I asked him what the impression looked like. He said it was deeper than the footprint in the ditch, much bigger, and whatever made it, the toes pointed forward like a human, but the shape was not human. The ground sank like it weighed at least 500-600 pounds. He ran his hands through his hair and started whispering lower. That thing wasn't just standing on the ridge that night, Mark. It climbed down. It was moving around while we were in the damn woods. I started to feel sick. Because if that was true, then it wasn't watching us out of curiosity. It was circling us, positioning itself, tracking our movements. Corey said he overheard the sheriff talking with one of the search supervisors. The sheriff said quiet, but almost angry, "Not again. Not this close to town. Shut this down. We're not doing this for a second time. Not again." A second time. The room started spinning around me when he said that. There had been another missing child case years before the one we were on. I'd heard about it in passing, but no details were ever public, just rumors. But now I knew why. Whatever we saw that night had been seen before, and the sheriff knew exactly what it meant. Corey didn't call to reconnect. He didn't call to share trauma or bond. He called because he got a letter sent by the boy's mother 7 years after the fact. She wrote to every responder who had been on scene that night. Deputies, volunteers, EMTs, firefighters. She said she was selling the house. Too many memories. Too much grief. But before she left, she wanted answers no one ever gave her. She wasn't accusing anyone. She wasn't angry. She was desperate. The letter ended with, "There are things I've told no one, things I heard that night. If you heard them too, please don't let me spend the rest of my life wondering." Corey said he threw the letter away the first time, tried to forget about it, tried to pretend he didn't feel sick reading it. But then something happened that pushed him over the edge. He pulled something from his jacket. It was an old printed photo, crinkled on the edges, and it was faded, but I recognized what it was instantly. It was the boy, the last photo taken before he went missing. We'd seen that photo 100 times during the search briefing, but this time, there was something in the background no one noticed. A tree lined behind the boy. It was blurred. Nothing was very clear. But there was a dark shape leaned out, just barely, like it was blending into the trees. The angle, the posture, the height. My heart damn near stopped when I seen it. It was the same thing we saw that night. The same thing that's followed me. The same thing that's followed him. And it had been near the boy before he even disappeared. I have begged for him to let me have that picture, or at least share it. He refuses. He even told me he burned it. I don't believe that. I think he still has it, but I don't think he'll ever let me share it publicly. Which I think is selfish, in my opinion. Before he left my apartment, he stood at the door and said something that will haunt me most likely until I die. He said that thing didn't kill the boy, Mark. It didn't take him to hurt him. It took him because something else out there was worse. He put his hand on my doorknob and said, and I think it followed us because we saw the moment that it decided. He left without saying anything else. I sat there for hours, replaying every second of that night that ruined my life, trying to make sense of what he'd just told me. Everything I thought was true was a lie. The creature wasn't random at all. It wasn't a mindless beast. It was not hunting. It was watching something else, reacting to something else, protecting itself from something else. I don't even know what that means yet. But the last part I'll send, that's when everything will come together. Something happened when I went back to the boy's old property. Something I still cannot explain. Something that told me the truth about why the creature kept showing up in my life and what it really wanted. We'll end this soon. It's getting harder for me to type these. Thank you, Reels. Truly. Mark. Email number 5. Subject line: what I found at the boy's property. I didn't plan on going back to that property. If anything, I'd spent years trying to avoid driving or going anywhere near it. After Corey left my apartment that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was unfinished business. Not for the boy, not for Corey, and not for me. And not for whatever that thing was. 3 days later, before the sun came up, I got in my truck and drove out there. I didn't tell anyone I was going. I didn't pack any gear. I didn't even bring a weapon. I just drove, like something else in me had already decided. The house had been sold, and most of the search volunteers had moved on. The sheriff who'd shut everything down retired 2 years earlier, but the land was still the land. The woods were still the woods, and the ridge was still exactly where I remembered it. When I pulled up, I could tell the new owners hadn't kept up with much. Tall grass up to my knees, a rusted swing set half hidden, the porch sagging like an old man's shoulders. There were kid toys in the yard, new ones, so I knew a family lived there now. For a minute that bothered me, a deep, sick kind of bother, because whatever took that boy, it wasn't gone, it wasn't defeated, it wasn't dead. And yet there were new kids, running around that same property like nothing bad had ever touched it. Part of me wanted to turn and go to the truck and turn around right then, but I didn't. Instead, I kept walking toward the tree line where the boy's mother once said she heard something calling to him. That always bothered me, because she was so careful in how she phrased it. She didn't say someone, she didn't say a person, she said something. And now that I know what was in those woods, I wish to God someone had listened to her. I stepped past the first row of trees, and it felt like the temperature dropped 10 degrees instantly. There was no wind, no shade, just that familiar heavy pressure that you feel when you walk into a room where two people were arguing right before you entered. It felt occupied. I followed the same rough line where the boy's small footprint was found years ago. I could still picture it, muddy, clear, facing the ditch like he'd been walking toward something instead of away. And then I walked up toward the ridge. Every step I took, my chest felt like someone was tightening a belt around it. The ridge that place haunted my nightmares. That ridge ruined my career. That ridge is where everything fell apart. It wasn't far, maybe a 15-minute walk, but my feet felt heavy, like someone had hooked weighted plates to my boots. When I reached the top, something in me just buckled, because Corey wasn't lying. Rain, snow, seasons, foot traffic, none of it erased the ground. The depression was near the ridge. I know it's hard to believe, but it was still there. I don't believe it was the same one, of course, but there was an impression there, and it was probably a new one. I don't think this thing ever left those woods. It wasn't shaped like any animal I know of. It was too long in the front, too skinny at the heel, and way too deep at the center. It wasn't one impression. I found two. The old, flattened, faded, but visible if you knew where to look. The newer impressions did not look exactly as he had described the old ones. These were definitely recent, maybe only weeks old. Behind the newer prints, a faint drag mark leading into the densest part of the woods. It wasn't dragging an animal or prey. It wasn't dragging something heavy. It looked like something with long arms had placed a hand in the dirt and just pulled itself forward, almost like a person would when crawling under barbed wire. My stomach turned so tight I thought I was going to throw up, but then I heard something that made my blood turn to ice water. A faint, slow inhale behind me. I didn't move, I just stood there, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't do anything else. I turned around inches at a time, and there it was. That same Dogman, cursed creature thing. But something was different this time. Its fur was a bit patchier. It was almost like it was scarred in places, like it had been injured before and healed badly. And its eyes weren't the eyes I remembered from the ditch. They weren't wide or shocked. They weren't burning with rage. They looked, I hate saying this, but they looked sad. It didn't growl at me, it just watched, like it always did. From 30, maybe 40 yards away, perfectly still, like a statue carved out of a living nightmare. I should have run, or yelled, or prayed, or done something, but instead I whispered, Why me? I don't even know why I said that. It wasn't a conscious choice. It was like something old in my chest split open and the words just fell out. The thing tilted its head slightly. It was like it recognized something inside me. Then it did something that should have sent me running down that ridge. It took a step back and lowered itself onto all fours, but it didn't leave. Instead, it stayed there, crouched, its shoulders rolling gently while it was breathing steadily, like it was waiting for me to understand something, like it was trying to tell me something. Right then and there, I heard a voice. Not out loud, not in English, not in any human way. It was more like a feeling turning into a thought, my thought, but not from me. And the meaning was simple. He wasn't taken. He was saved. I stumbled back until my heel hit a tree. Saved. From what? From it? Or from something worse? The creature blinked once, and for a minute its whole posture sagged, almost like it was exhausted or it was grieving. That just set me off. I choked out somehow and screamed, "Where is he?" There was no response. I stepped forward once without even thinking, and the creature flinched, not in fear, but in a way that said, "You better stop." Then another wave of meaning rolled through my body, more clear this time. Alive then, not now. My chest felt like it collapsed from the inside. I didn't need an explanation. I didn't want one. The message felt final. The boy died long after he disappeared, but not from violence, not from being taken like prey. Something was hunting him, something this creature feared too. And the creature took him to hide him, not to harm him. Whatever hunted that boy, it wasn't me, it wasn't Corey, it wasn't the sheriff. It was something none of us ever even saw. Something the Dogman itself did not want to face. I asked another question. Why follow me? The answer hit me very fast and sharp. You looked when others ran. That was it. Not destiny, not a curse, not a bond. Just that simple. I didn't look away during the moment I should have, and because of that, it couldn't forget me. It then turned around slow, and, moving in its own strange posture, it just walked off into the woods. It's like it was walking away from something final. It never looked back. I stayed there until dark. I don't know how long I stood on that ridge, long enough for the shadows to stretch into the tree line. Long enough for the new family's kids to come outside, shout, laugh, and run back in. Long enough to understand what really destroyed my life. It wasn't the Dogman. It wasn't the silence. The not knowing. The years of thinking the worst. The years of imagining that boy's suffering. But that wasn't the truth. He wasn't tortured. He wasn't eaten. He wasn't hunted down by the Dogman. He was protected, moved, hidden. He survived the night because of the thing we feared. Whatever took him in the end, it wasn't that creature. That's as much closure as I'm likely to ever get. But it's more than I deserved. I'm writing this now because I can't talk to Corey anymore. He moved out of state, disconnected his number completely. I don't really blame him. Some people get answers and it frees them. Others get answers and it breaks them even worse. I don't know which one I am yet. But here's what I do know. That creature never came back after the ridge. Not once. Not in the alley. Not in that ditch. Not outside my window. Whatever unfinished business it had with me ended on that ridge. I still can't sleep very well. I still see that boy's face when I close my eyes. I still replay every bad call I ever worked. But for the first time since that night, I feel like part of that weight finally slid off of me. Not all of it, never all of it, but enough. Enough to breathe again. Enough to start trying. Enough to write all this out. You can share this if you want, or not. I don't care, really. I don't care if people believe me either. I know how all this sounds. The one thing I do care about is that maybe, just maybe, someone else out there will hear this, and someone who saw something they can't explain, and they won't feel as alone as I did. That's all. Mark. Friends, legends, family. That's going to wrap it up for tonight. I don't really have some big speech after this one. Some stories don't leave you with answers, they leave you with weight to carry. And what you just heard was a man finally setting some of that weight down after carrying it for most of his life. To the person who sent this in, seriously, thank you. It takes guts to talk about something like that. It takes even more to let a stranger read it out loud for thousands of people to hear. You didn't owe anybody this story, but you trusted me with it, and I do not take that lightly. To everyone listening, thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the channel, for showing up, for caring about the folks who write in, even when the stories aren't easy ones. A huge thank you to all the channel members. You all keep this whole thing going. There are more uploads coming. I'm not slowing down. We've got new encounters in the works. There's emails coming in daily. Take care of yourselves out there. Please, stay safe, everyone. Until next time, my friends. Watch over your loved ones. Keep your head on a swivel. And as always, good night.